Introduction to Tokyo Martial Arts Story. A Central Plains boy travels to Tokyo and writes a martial arts story. My name is Yen Kai, 15 years old, from the Central Plains. I came to study in Japan and attended a private Shenjian school. My hobbies are drawing comics, discussing plot with my senior sister, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, and competing in martial arts with my second senior sister, Yuko Tokushima. I make a living by working 2 jobs. I practice for 4 hours every day at home, meditate for 2 hours, draw comics until dawn, and the school doctor Yumen Liangzi asks me why I haven't died yet. P.S. Comprehensive manga background. The protagonist adapted martial arts dramas and drew comics, with memories mostly from the 80s and 90s. 1. Some pre-viewing reminders. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The original intention of writing this book is actually very childish. For a period of time, I read a lot of Japanese drama novels, and when I saw the authors in the book saying how powerful and beautiful those Japanese dramas, Japanese cartoons, and Japanese novels were, I felt a bit dissatisfied. I thought that the martial arts dramas we watched when we were children were also very good. Why do we have to write those Japanese dramas? So, when my mind was hot, I wrote this novel. It was really, really hot. In the early part of the novel, I foolishly used a lot of space to describe the content of those martial arts dramas, which was the reason why many readers discouraged me. I knew I should, but I felt it didn't matter because I was just writing this book to promote the drama. But it's also surprising that there are still people who like the part of the content I write myself, asking me to write less about martial arts dramas and more about the content of the novels themselves. It was only then that I realized that people actually read what I write. Well, to be honest, I was very moved in my heart, so I started changing my style. After about 200 chapters, I stopped focusing on describing the content of martial arts dramas and started to focus on my own creation. Although I dare not say how good my content is, I finally went out. So, for readers of this novel who have seen too many plot points in the manga, please be patient. After about 200 chapters, I will briefly cover the manga content to avoid affecting the viewing experience. If there is a large amount of manga content in previous chapters, I will also indicate it in the title. If you don't like it, you can skip it. I hope this novel, like a sewing monster, can bring some fun to all readers, so that I don't write this novel in vain. Please leave more comments and comments. My monthly writing income is only a few to 10 yuan, and I'm really just interested in writing. It's not worth your money. Seeing some interesting comments is the biggest motivation to support me in writing. Thank you. Chapter 1. My name is Yen Kai, from the Central Plains. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's already time for school to end. Outside the private seminary school, in a popular coffee shop, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, who is thinking like a spring, is typing in her notebook like a tide. In the quiet coffee shop, the faint words spoken by the students who took a break after school couldn't completely cover the sound of typing. Correspondingly, gorgeous phrases and emotional conversations emerged with the dense sound of typing, and in no time, tens of thousands of words were typed out, truly deserving of the title of Coder G. Ha! The inspiration ran out in a short time, and the typing sound came to an end. Finally, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, who had stopped, stretched lazily and let out a long breath. The excitement had passed, and Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu began to feel a bit tired. Alright, let me see what I actually wrote. As a talented author who relies on talent to make a living, when Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu's inspiration comes, he often writes things that he doesn't even know, and how many of them are gold and jade, and how many are bad news, which is also difficult to describe. Tens of thousands of words of manuscript have been shot without a trace, which has happened countless times. Just as Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu wanted to calm down and carefully read the manuscript she had written, a faint, exceptionally soothing sound of a swish came to her ears. This sound seemed to have been heard by Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu when she was coding, but it was covered by the coding sound. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu could only vaguely hear it. Now the coding sound has stopped, and the brushing sound has become clear. A hint of curiosity arose in her heart, and Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu couldn't help but search for the source of her voice, only to find it prominently in the seat behind her. I saw a young man wearing a private Pantheon school uniform lying on the table, scribbling something, and the sound of brushing was naturally made by him. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu looked at it for a while before finally confirming that the boy was actually drawing a comic. Originally, as a light novel author, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu was not very familiar with comic drawing, but also knew some things. It should not be impossible to see at a glance that this young man was drawing comics. However, when this young man started drawing comics, he was completely different from other comic authors. With a sheet of paper and a pencil, he swiped and swished a few times, and with an exceptionally decisive posture, he finalized the storyline for each page of the comic. Then, instead of using a pencil to further enrich the storyline and turn it into a draft, he simply changed it into a wet pen and began writing. In one go, there was almost no pause, no hesitation, and of course no modification. With a flying pen, in about 10 minutes, a complete painting was born from his hand. Is this drawing a comic? Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu's head was full of question marks. Even though she had never learned to draw comics, she had never eaten pork and had seen those dead houses running around in the school's comic research club. Oh no, it was drawing comics. The basic painting tools such as correction fluid, brush, dot paper, art knife, ruler, have never been used by this young man. However, looking at the objects placed on his table, a few pages of finished artwork spread out, a stack of paper, a brand new and unused eraser, a bottle of ink occasionally dipped in when opened, a pencil that is occasionally used to make up for a few strokes, a glass of plain water that seems to have never been drunk, at least there are no more, as if it is indeed the appearance of not intending to use those tools. After a painting was completed, the young man couldn't help but straighten up, pushed his glasses, and had a thoughtful expression on his face. Seeing the young man lift his head, the reserved and beautiful girl Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu quickly turned her head. After turning her head, she nervously glanced at him with the corner of her eye, realizing that the young man had not noticed his gaze just now. She couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief in her heart. In Japan, it is not appropriate for girls to stare at boys recklessly, and this is not in line with Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu's aloofness. Of course, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu does not want to be caught by the boys peeping, although it is not something unseen. Is the face you haven't seen before a freshman in first grade? Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu thought to himself. The private seminary school has only been open for a month, so if it's a freshman in the first grade, there is indeed a possibility that they may not know each other. Although Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu is not enthusiastic about socializing, and can even be said to be a person who dislikes socializing, with his outstanding memory, if the young man is a second and third grade old face Kong, who is in the same school, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu should not have no impression at all. That's a strange person. With this thought in mind, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu quickly shifted her attention back to her own manuscript. It is obvious that he is just a slightly strange person and not enough to involve too much of Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu's mind. The Metronome of Love, this debut work that has already been heavily invested by Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, is now the top priority. Although the first volume of the novel has already been released, the results are not good. According to the discussion in the editorial department, it is very likely that the 3 volumes will be completed soon. This ending is not what Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu wants to see. The first volume that has been released cannot be changed by Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, but it is impossible for her to willingly complete her debut in 3 volumes. Therefore, all she can do now is to perfect the second volume, gain the trust of the editorial department, and win the favor of readers. As long as the second volume of Love Metronome can achieve good results, this child can also get rid of the fate of being cut off. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu no longer thought about the young man, but the young man jokingly found himself at the door. The next day, after school, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, who was returning home, packed her backpack and was planning to go back home to continue brainstorming the plot of Love Metronome. After using her classroom time to replenish her sleep, she was now energetic and suitable for staying at home and having sex. Yesterday was a sudden inspiration, afraid that it would disappear on the road, so I hurriedly went to the coffee shop next to the school to jot down the inspiration. Today, I'm not in a hurry, of course, I have to go home. But what Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu didn't know was that at this moment, outside the classroom, a young man who was about to change her future was waiting for her. "Excuse me, is it Sister Shiyu from Xia Zhiqiu?" Yesterday, the strange young man with a cartoon in the coffee shop leaned slightly in front of Shiyu from Xia Zhiqiu, who walked out of the classroom. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu frowned. Yuan Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu only speculated that the boy was a freshman in high school, but now, after seeing the silver star emblem on the boy's school uniform collar, it has been confirmed that the boy is a freshman in first grade. Japan is a country that places great emphasis on the importance of seniority, and this is also true in schools. The status of lower and higher grades is completely different, and it is only natural for higher grades to send orders to lower grades in Japan. In the same school, for the convenience of distinguishing between high and low ages, some marks are often made on the school uniform to distinguish between high and low ages. The silver star emblem on the collar of the youth's clothing is exactly the symbol of first-grade students in private Shinto schools. It is very impolite for a first-year freshman to just bow when facing a second-year senior. Although Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu also dislikes the behavior of shouting at younger generations based on their seniority, she also does not have a good impression of an impolite person. Seeing that Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu did not deny his identity, the young man continued, "Hello, my name is Yan Kai. I am an international student from the Central Plains and have heard a lot about you. It's my first time meeting. Nice to meet you." According to the etiquette of Japanese people, when meeting someone for the first time, one should say, "Please give me more guidance." However, this Central Plains person named Yan Kai is more accustomed to saying, "happy to meet." Considering that there seems to be no such thing as "happy to meet" in Japanese, it was changed to "nice to meet you." People from the Central Plains. The frown of Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu stretched out and turned into curiosity. It is normal for foreigners to not understand the customs of Japan, and Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu naturally forgave Yan Kai's impoliteness. It was only then that he began to face Yan Kai squarely. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu has a tall and slender figure, which is rare among high school students in Japan. Even when facing most boys, she can still look straight up. However, the somewhat strange Central Plains person in front of her needs her to slightly lift her head. She should be at least 1.8 meters tall or above, neither fat nor thin, neither bulky nor like a bamboo pole, which is just right. Fair skin, especially better than women. This makes Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu a little uncomfortable. Why is a man with such good white and blind skin wearing wide and thick old-fashioned glasses on his face, covering most of his face? The thick lenses were a vast expanse of white, making it difficult to see his face clearly. The lips are very thin, and the corners of the mouth are slightly upturned, as if it can evoke a smile at any time, but it is quite pleasing. The chin is pointed, but it has a strong resemblance to the protagonist of a beautiful teenage manga. Zhaozuiyuan.com Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu whispered in secret, "He is really a strange person. The situation is like this. I have heard that Xia Zhiqiu has outstanding literary talent and has even helped write scripts for the drama club. Therefore, I have some things that I would like to ask Xia Zhiqiu for help. Could you please take a step forward and listen to my demands?" Yan Kai wrote a poem and said to Xia Zhiqiu. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu originally wanted to refuse, but thinking of Yan Kai's abnormal painting skills in the coffee shop yesterday, he still instinctively nodded and said, "Sure." Since the other party praised their literary talent and thought of Yan Kai drawing comics, it is likely that they wanted to seek help from themselves in terms of comic plot. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu not only wrote scripts for the drama society, but also was invited by the Animation Research Society to work as a screenwriter. In the end, due to the poor drawing skills of the Animation Research Society, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu did not like it, which was why it did not succeed. Yesterday, I just hurriedly read Yan Kai's manga, and I had no idea what the content was like. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu couldn't help but confirm that it wasn't scribbling or scribbling. However, due to staying up late to write, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu has become a bit nearsighted and can't read it clearly. But if Yan Kai really had excellent drawing skills and could perfectly portray the story in her heart through comics, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu would be willing to spend some time on him. If not, then nowadays, unlike in the past, a light novel that wants to sell well and expand its influence cannot be separated from manga and animation. Although it is still early to mention this, if you can meet a potential manga author now, it can be considered as paving the way for the future. It's not surprising that Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu was utilitarian, but rather for the sake of her first child. In The Metronome of Love, she had already hollowed out her thoughts and wanted to try any method. Chapter 2. Sword Roaring Jianghu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sword, the revered one of 10,000 soldiers, swordsmanship, like the sun, slanted like a flying rabbit, vertical and horizontal in reverse, straight and straight without hearing. Yesterday at the coffee shop, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu sat in her seat and carefully read the painting in her hand, silently reciting the narration written in the first box of the painting in her heart. It was a bit inconvenient to talk about things at school, so Yan Kai suggested coming to yesterday's coffee shop, and according to Yan Kai's tone, he seemed to be a regular there. Yan Kai was indeed as Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu had imagined. The purpose of finding her was related to the comic. After the two of them arrived at the coffee shop, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu had not yet started ordering, so Yan Kai directly handed a thick stack of paintings to Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu only thought it over and realized that this painting probably had 300 to 400 pages. How dare he not be afraid of the failure of submission and turn all his efforts into foam when he directly painted so many pictures. Generally speaking, even if a new comic author has confidence in their work, they will only draw a few words before submitting it, because even if their work is recognized by the comic club and they feel that the comic can be serialized after discussion, they will still make some corrections to the comic. This is the power of the editorial department and also an education for ignorant new comic authors who do not understand the market situation. That is to say, even if these 300 to 400 pages of artwork are submitted successfully, there is a high possibility that they will be forced to revise most of them, at least 200 pages. But thinking about the rocket speed at which the young man across the street could draw a page of artwork in just over 10 minutes, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu felt that perhaps they were not afraid at all. Being quick is just being capricious. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, who could easily delete tens of thousands or even tens of thousands of words from a manuscript without even frowning, had some agreement with Yan Kai. Xia Zhiqiu, what do you want? Please feel free to order. I'm sorry to trouble you for coming, so let me treat you this time. Please don't refuse at all. Recruiting a waiter, Yan Kai handed over the power to order to Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu and declared in advance that he would be responsible for paying the bill. There are similarities and significant differences in the customs and habits between Japan and the Central Plains. Taking men and women dining together as an example, if in the Central Plains, it is basically a male treat, and women only need to bring their mouths open. However, in Japan, unless there are special circumstances, it is all under the AA system. It's strange to say that at such times, women in the Central Plains who have always advocated gender equality and stood up for women always become more delicate, waiting for men to take care of everything and pay for it. However, Japanese women, who are accustomed to being male vassals, appear very self-reliant and insist on paying their own share. It's really strange. Of course, this time it was Yan Kai's request for Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, so it was only natural for Yan Kai to treat him. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu raised his eyebrows, and his dark personality couldn't help but emerge. Then I'll take this. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu clicked on the highest priced desserts in one breath and even picked out the most expensive mocha coffee. Make you generous. The waiter who takes note of the order is overjoyed. These desserts and coffee together cost tens of thousands of yen. A glass of plain water, thank you. Yen Kai remained motionless and said to the waiter. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu chuckled inwardly, thinking that Yen Kai was so heartbroken that he could only save money by ordering plain boiled water. Not seeing Yen Kai's ugly expression, the waiter felt a bit disappointed, but still went to prepare desserts and coffee. It's not that the waiter likes to slaughter customers, but Yen Kai for a month in a row, the coffee shop has only ordered a cup of 100 yen plain water, which is no wonder the waiter has objections to Yen Kai. Although the waiter received a dead salary and Yen Kai had nothing to do with anything, the waiter couldn't help but be unhappy with such stingy customers. Even the store manager has objections to Yen Kai. It was because of Yen Kai that the free boiled water was set at a price of 100 yen by the store manager. As a result, the store manager was scolded by customers who came into the store, but not doing so was really hard to swallow. This is not a matter of money or not, the key is to hate customers who occupy the pit and don't poop. The rent for the shops next to the school is very expensive. Without mentioning the grievances of the waiter and store manager, while waiting for the dessert to be served, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu continued to look at the painting and couldn't help but be mesmerized by it. The story tells of a samurai born in a farmer who, after being invincible in Japan, travels thousands of miles across the sea to search for opponents in the Central Plains, causing a bloody storm in the martial arts world. This Japanese samurai is portrayed as extremely powerful in the manga, and his character is also very eye-catching. He grew from a farmer to become the top expert in Japan, which is not stronger than his fourth-generation son clamoring to become Hokage. Grassroots rise, perhaps only people from the Central Plains dare to draw. In the Japanese manga world, few dare to do so. After all, bloodline determinism in Japan can be said to be like a curse, and not everyone can bear the consequences of breaking it. Time was limited, and Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu only looked at the beginning, only to see that the group of righteous sects in the Central Plains were forced to have no choice but to design a duel between the Japanese samurai Lu Sheng and the first swordsman in the Central Plains, Yen Beifei. This Yen Beifei seems to be a very story-telling person, with an indescribable grudge against the righteous sects in the Central Plains, and seems to have a more protagonist appearance than Lu Sheng's sword. In addition to these two people, there is also a very interesting character, a Taoist named Sangsong. He used to be a bandit in the Green Forest and infiltrated the largest sect of Wudang in the martial arts world in order to unify the martial arts world. He has even been recognized by the Wudang sect leader and has become the heir of Wudang. Having courage, ambition, and perseverance is not as exciting as that. Is this a group portrait anime with 3 suspected protagonists? Just as Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu was about to continue watching, Yen Kai knocked on the table and interrupted her with a sound. She said to Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, "Xia Zhiqiu, the coffee is going to be cold." Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu suddenly woke up from the world of comics. At first glance, half an hour had passed, and not only had the dessert she had ordered placed on the table, but even the coffee no longer had any heat coming out. This comic is quite interesting. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu regained her aloof expression, but she didn't know that her face and ears had already turned slightly red due to the intense and tense plot in the manga, and her aloof expression couldn't hold. Yen Kai didn't expose it and smiled slightly, saying, "Thank you for your praise." After a pause, Yen Kai continued, "If Sister Xia Zhiqiu thinks this comic is acceptable, can you do me a favor? Can you help me first?" Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu slowly calmed down. This manga, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu read over 100 pages in half an hour. It's not that she reads the manga slowly, but rather that it has many details that need to be savored carefully. Unlike the popular fast food manga nowadays, it's as refreshing as it is. Just read it with your eyes and don't even need to use your brain to read it. Especially many of the dialogues have profound meanings and contain various flavors of life. It is not enough for Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu to read them once. He must chew them carefully and read them several times to be satisfied. If you were to say how much help Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu could provide with such a comic, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu couldn't believe it. Actually, it's like this. Yan Kai's face showed a hint of embarrassment, but of course, due to the large glasses blocking it, no one could see it. Half of my Japanese is taught by my aunt, and the other half is self-taught. I can handle daily life quite well, but when writing character dialogues, I sometimes feel that something is not right. So, I want to ask Xia Zhiqiu for her excellent literary ability to help me modify the dialogue in the manga according to its original meaning, so that these dialogues can be more fluent and easy to read. So it's like this: the poem Feather of Xia Zhiqiu suddenly appeared. Carefully recalling the comic content I just read, it is true that the plot is compact, logical, and the characters have distinct personalities. The storyline is super strong, allowing people to naturally imagine continuous actions in their minds. The sense of power and expressive tension are also full marks. Without looking at the follow-up, only the content that Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu has seen now. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu believes that Yan Kai's comic is not inferior to those top-tier gods in the comic industry. Of course, the outcome remains to be discussed. Whether it can become a masterpiece cannot be determined solely by looking at the beginning. If there is anything wrong with this manga, it is likely that there is a slight grammar issue in the character dialogue, but it does not affect reading. At least Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu can understand the character's dialogue very well. However, it's okay not to mention this small flaw, but it pierced into Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu's heart like a thorn, making her obsessive-compulsive disorder a bit restless. However, asking the future literary magnate, teacher Xia Zhiqiu, to do these small things would be too simplistic. I feel that any student with a Mandarin score of 90 or above can handle it. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu is a bit unhappy. But considering that if I agree, wouldn't I be able to see the follow-up of this comic as soon as possible? Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu had to nod and agree. Alright, since my junior has pleaded like this, I can only help you. The social relations in Japan place great importance on human relationships, and the higher grades naturally have the obligation to help the lower grades under the premise of having the power to shout out loud to the lower grades. If only the authority of the senior is applied to the younger students, but they refuse to help them even a little, it will also have a great impact on the reputation of the senior students. So Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu decided to help this poor, weak, and helpless junior. After all, judging from his gentle and introverted demeanor, he took out a painstaking painting and handed it to himself for correction. It must have been a struggle and hesitation for a long time. As a senior in life, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu naturally cannot defeat his junior. I haven't said a few words yet. Why did it turn into a plea? A question mark rose on Yan Kai's forehead, but it was not an important matter. Yan Kai just thought about it and skipped it. Since that's the case, thank you, Sister Xia Zhiqiu, Yan Kai said, taking out a thick envelope from her arms and placing it on the table, pushing it towards Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu instinctively picked up the envelope and took a look, then breathed heavily. Surprisingly, there are all Yuji, 10,000 yuan banknotes, inside. What do you mean by this? The poem of Xia Zhiqiu is full of suspicion and uncertainty. It's nothing, the polishing fee, Yan Kai replied calmly. My mother once told me that bad people talk about ideals, and good people talk about money. If I only talk about ideals and human relationships without giving benefits, doesn't it seem hypocritical to me? So gratitude must be given. I don't know what Xia Zhiqiu likes, so I can only choose the most vulgar thing as a substitute. Please don't take it amiss, Xia Zhiqiu. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu swallowed her saliva and said, 1 million yen. Even if she comes from a wealthy family, such a large amount of money is not something she can easily have at her age. In her life, the first time she made money on her own was the cost of writing Love Metronome, plus the royalties from the novel's distribution, which added up to only over 800,000 yuan. There's nothing she can do. She's just a new writer, with low royalties and a royalty rate of over 800,000 yen. It's not a small sum of money anymore, comparable to the average salaried person's income of 2 to 3 months. However, today, just now, 1 million yen is being pushed in front of Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu without any psychological preparation. The waves in Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu's heart are not something that can be explained in just a few words. No, this is not a big deal, there's no need for such remuneration. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu did not firmly refuse the way. Anyway, this 1 million yuan salary is too high. If we treat her to a few meals, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu would be ashamed to receive it. However, if Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu accepts such a large amount of money, she will definitely feel uneasy. Her work is not worth this price. Or rather, what are the intentions of these people from the Central Plains towards themselves? With the self-awareness and arrogance of, I am the most beautiful girl in all, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu immediately became vigilant. Could it be that these people from the Central Plains want to use money to corrupt and tempt me, and then do such and such things to me? Do your spring and autumn dreams. After completing the 3 evil and decadent notebooks in her mind, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu became even more determined to refuse. Yen Kai didn't know what Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu had brainstormed in a short period of time, but smiled and said, in theory, it's not necessary, but I always believe that although there is a possibility of getting big returns with small efforts, the possibility of getting big returns with big efforts is higher, isn't it? This comic is my painstaking work, and only if it can be improved to the slightest extent, I will spare no effort. The reason why I gave 1 million yen is not that I am only willing to pay 1 million yen, but that I have only this 1 million yen of idle money at my disposal. If I had 10 million yen of idle money, I would definitely not hesitate. If Senior Xia Zhiqiu really feels that her job is not worth so much money, then please make your work so valuable. Yen Kai solemnly said. Even with those wide and eye-catching glasses, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu could feel how firm Yen Kai's will was this time. He really valued this manga to the point of giving it all. As creators, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu has a strong empathy for Yen Kai's feelings. But even so, you can't force others like this. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu feels angry in her heart. Even if she plays a D.level task, she won't receive SSS evaluation. This is making things difficult for her, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu. Compared to the conflicted Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, Yen Kai felt much more relaxed. However, seeing this amount of compensation can make Xia Zhiqiu feel pressure, so I feel at ease. I believe that Xia Zhiqiu will do her job to the best of her ability to live up to this 1 million, right? Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu did think in her heart how she would fulfill Yen Kai's commission with all her heart if she really accepted this money, but upon hearing Yen Kai's words, she became even angrier. This person from the Central Plains seems to have a much worse personality than he looks. Yen Kai didn't care how Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu slandered him in his heart. He stood up and called for a waiter. After paying the bill, he said to Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, Xia Zhiqiu, I still have a job, so I won't continue to accompany you. The painting is a copy, you can take it back and look at it casually. If there are any changes, just write them in pencil. Of course, please don't pass on the painting, thank you. Surprisingly, I still have to work. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu raised his eyebrows and said, your family should be very wealthy, but you actually have to work. Even an average adult would find it difficult to easily offer 1 million yen, and Yen Kai paid it to Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu without blinking an eye. According to Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu's thoughts, Yen Kai must be a wealthy child. Private godly schools do not prohibit working, and they also have good communication with many units that require students to work. Every year, they send a fixed number of students to those units, allowing students to work in those units without receiving any commission. But Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu has never heard of a job that can earn 1 million yuan. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu had already learned that Yen Kai was an international student who only came to Japan this year. In other words, if Yan Kai had not lied, he would have earned 1 million yuan from working. So, he only had about a month to work, and this 1 million yuan was his monthly salary. If there were any job positions in a company with a monthly salary of 1 million yuan, not to mention high school students, adults would compete for it. Haha. Yan Kai smiled inexplicably twice. I do have some money at home, but to be honest, I am currently running away from home because my family does not support me in drawing comics. I came to Japan to study abroad on my own, just to pursue my dreams. Therefore, my pocket money has long been cut off by my family, and the 1 million I paid you was indeed earned from working. Yan Kai was not shy about his situation, but he pointed it out and didn't say much. Does the wealthy young master run away from home in pursuit of his dreams? This segment may seem outdated on TV, but in reality, it's a bit fresh to see. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu looked at Yan Kai, and his liking for him slightly increased. However, if you earn 1 million by working, what job are you doing, nightclub bull boy? Your appearance doesn't seem like you can eat this bowl of rice, does it? Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu spoke harshly in her heart. Zhaozhuyuan.com. Hey, wait, why did I just roast in my heart, but I couldn't say it. Mists arose in the heart of Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu. She is not a reserved and gentle woman. On the contrary, among the two beautiful women in the second year of the private seminary school, unlike Ryoko Tokushima, who is revered as the modern Yamato Fuko and highly admired by younger generations and peers, she is known for her venomous tongue, and even more so, her reputation is even louder than that of a talented woman. But for some reason, in front of Yan Kai, the poison tongue mode that used to be activated without thinking has been constantly in a state of shutdown, unable to say a single unpleasant word. Yan Kai left, but Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu had no appetite for the desserts on the table. He could only look in the direction Yan Kai was leaving and say, what a strange person. As for the emotions conveyed in these words, even she herself may not be clear about them. Holding on to the painting tightly, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu gulped down the coffee and asked the waiter to pack the desserts before getting up and leaving the coffee shop. She obviously couldn't eat so many desserts alone. Her original intention was just to make Yan Kai feel heartbroken, but Yan Kai was willing to pay 1 million yen without blinking his eyes, so the money for these desserts was of no use to him. A punch fell into the air, and now Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu not only didn't have the joy of a successful prank, but also started counting calories. So many sweets, how much exercise is needed to burn off the calories? I'm just a delicate literary girl, I don't want to exercise. Am I being calculated by that bastard from the Central Plains? Is that right? Yeah. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu said with a headache. What? Not eating? Are you joking? How could this be possible? In this world, delicious food cannot be let down. Chapter 3. Senior Sister 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next day, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu woke up to the melodious bell of the end of class. Yesterday, in order to fight against the demon named Calories, the warrior of wisdom and beauty, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu fought fiercely for 2 hours before finally being able to eliminate them. Today, she was severely injured, and during class, she was finally defeated by the invasion of the sleeping demon and dragged into a deep abyss. Now, she finally woke up from the call of the divine horn. Okay, actually she had too much exercise yesterday and was exhausted today. She fell asleep in class and was finally woken up by the bell after class. However, others, whether teachers or classmates, didn't feel anything was wrong with this because she often stays up late to write articles and uses class time to catch up on sleep. As for the different reasons for catching up on sleep today, who can tell? Immortals. It's also fortunate that Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu has never lost her first place in the academic qualification test since she entered school. She has privileges among teachers, otherwise she would have been standing outside the classroom carrying a bucket of water now. That manga called Sword Roaring Jianghu is really impressive. Yesterday, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu rarely focused on writing, but instead read the comic book Sword Roaring in the Jianghu that Yan Kai gave her yesterday. One time was not enough, she read it 3 times and didn't fall asleep until 2 or 3 in the morning without realizing it. Because that comic is really amazing. There are passionate fights, as well as conspiracies and mysteries, as well as tenderness and boundless ambition. The plot is intricately intertwined, without any forced or fabricated elements. In various conflicts, the characters showcase their personalities to the fullest. The devout swordsman Lu Xing's sword, the passionate Yan Beifei, and the wise and confident Song Song. These characters with distinct personalities are vividly depicted on the paper, making Xia Zhiqiu's poetry unable to stop. And Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu also found greater significance in her work. Previously, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu only saw Lu Xing's sword, knowing the existence of Yan Beifei and wanting to challenge him. The characters in the scene were all male, and although there were some grammar issues in their dialogues, they were just minor flaws. In the following content, after Yan Beifei's wife Chu Xinru and Lu Xing's wife Qianhizi appeared, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu felt that her workload had suddenly increased. As a male, Yan Kai clearly cannot control female lines to the same level as men. Although she can barely catch the eye, overall, she lacks a lot of meaning. At least if Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu were to write it, it would definitely improve several levels. Junior, your spending of 1 million is worth it. See how the senior sister corrects you. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, who felt that she could do it again, carefully read the over 300 pages of the painting over 3 times overnight, in order to control all the existing plot and slowly modify the lines of Chu Xinru and Qianhizi. This is the first time she has been so devoted to works beyond her own. On the painting for Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, the dialogues of the characters were all written in pencils, and it was effortless for Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu to make changes. Taking advantage of the time after class, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu took out the painting and wanted to make some revisions first. A painting of over 300 pages, even if it's just changing the lines, is not an easy task. It's probably not possible to finish it in a day, and you may even have to stay up late at night. However, even if I have completed the modifications, where should I go to find that Central Plain student? Yesterday, Yan Kai left in a hurry and surprisingly did not leave any contact information for Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, which was later reflected by Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu. Surprisingly, he didn't take the opportunity to ask for his senior sister's contact information and line number. This unremarkable junior from Zhongyuan will definitely be single for a lifetime in the future. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu thought with hatred. I have no choice but to go to the Ministry of Education after school to find out. There are still very few international students from Central Plains, so it should be easy to inquire. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu had such a plan, but when she went to look for Yan Kai in the Ministry of Science and Technology after school, Yan Kai had already left the teaching building of the Ministry of Science and Technology and came to the Kendo department of the private Shenjian school. He didn't come to join the Kendo department to learn Kendo, his purpose was to find someone here, someone important to his manga. Excuse me, is it senior student Ryoko Tokushima? Similar to the opening when meeting Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu for the first time, Yan Kai found Tokushima Ryoko, who was supervising the Kendo department member Su Zhen. With a cold and bright face, holding a wooden knife and dressed in a sword costume, Yuko Tokushima instinctively took a few steps back when he saw the sudden appearance of Yan Kai. Yes, I am Ryoko Tokushima. May I ask if there is anything I can do for my junior brother? Ryoko Tokushima squinted her eyes and carefully looked at Yan Kai. He has a tall and slender figure, which is rare in Japan. His wide glasses cover most of his face, making it difficult for Tokushima Ryoko to see his appearance clearly. This uninvited junior student looks very ordinary, but it is absolutely impossible for an ordinary person to approach the 2-meter range of Ryoko Tokushima without being noticed by her. Ryoko Tokushima has this confidence. Junior, do you know martial arts? Asked Ryoko Tokushima again. With slender limbs and a seamless breath, he can get close to himself without being noticed. This junior must also be a martial artist. I heard that Poison Island senior sister is rumored to be a Poison Island student. Yan Kai didn't answer Ryoko's question, instead he asked himself a question. The qualification that was barely obtained before the new year, said Yuko Tokushima with a reserved and polite tone. Poison Island Flow is one of the top ancient swordsmanship schools in Japan. The so-called ancient swordsmanship schools refer to those that teach internal strength and practical swordsmanship, rather than the popular performance-style swordsmanship. There are many martial arts schools in Japan, with a total of hundreds of people, big and small. It is not uncommon for small schools to have a few people, and it is also common for large schools to have tens of thousands. The difficulty of obtaining the qualification for exemption from the spread of martial arts varies greatly. Although not comparable to the top 3 factions in Japan, being able to obtain the qualification for exemption from the Poison Island Pass requires the strength of a swordsman at the first level. Ryoko Poison Island is only 17 years old this year, and being able to obtain the qualification for exemption from the Poison Island Pass at this age can be said to be a rare talent. Unlike modern swordsmanship, which regards swordsmanship as a performative sport, ancient swordsmanship has its own system and is not divided into several stages or levels, only roughly divided into 4 realms. Swordsman, swordsman, great swordsman, and swordsman. Among them, the sword saint is both a realm and a title. In the same era, there was usually only one person. Currently, there are 4 swordsmen in the Japanese sword saint realm, but the only one who holds the sword saint title is the head of the Mirror Heart Mingzilius sect. Tao Jing Kong. The previous generation of sword saint was the head of the Shinto Wumindlius sect. Saito Daizo. The ancient martial arts stream corresponding to the ancient swordsmanship stream is divided into 5 major realms. Disciples, skilled hands, experts, masters, and masters. Among them, disciples and skilled hands correspond to swordsmen in the ancient swordsmanship system, and later correspond 1.2.1. The strength of the first-level sword master of Tokushima Ryoko corresponds to the experts in ancient martial arts, and he is already qualified to lead alone in the Japanese martial arts world, opening a school to teach apprentices. My name is Yan Kai, from the Central Plains, and my hobby is drawing comics. I am currently working on a martial arts comic. The comic has an important character, a Japanese samurai, and I have designed some martial arts actions for this character myself, which is still good. However, I am not very satisfied with the design of the crucial battle. Last week, I had the opportunity to see Sister Poison Island and other members of the school's swordsmanship department in an exchange competition. Swordsmanship is very suitable for my samurai character, so I would like to ask Sister Poison Island to provide guidance on my character's martial arts actions. Yan Kai's personality is just like his name, and he likes to get straight to the point. Lu Xingyijian's position in swordsmanship in the world is absolutely crucial, and his martial arts scenes are naturally of great importance. However, so far, he has drawn several duels between Lu Xingyijian and Yan Beifei, and the results have not satisfied Yan Kai. To be more accurate, he is not satisfied with the martial arts design of Lu Xingyijian. Yan Kai's martial arts skills were directly based on his own, of course not a problem, but if he wants to imagine a Japanese swordsman with a similar level out of thin air, he is really making things difficult for Yan Kai. It's also fortunate that last week Yan Kai saw the swordsmanship of Yuko Tokushima and discovered an excellent tool man. No, it's an excellent martial arts action guide. Is that so, but I still have club activities to attend to. Can I wait for my club activities to end? Tokushima Ryoko had a good temper and did not refuse, but instead asked Yan Kai-sien to wait. As mentioned before, the senior has an obligation to help the junior, it's just a small favor. As a senior sister, Ryoko Tokushima naturally needs to help. Now she only thought that Yan Kai wanted her to freely wield her Poison Island flow swordsmanship, and never expected Yan Kai to be so strict with her. And Yen Kai took out a thick piece of paper and said to Ryoko Tokushima, "I'm not in a hurry about that. Besides, this is a comic I drew. I hope my senior sister can take some time to read it and experience the characters inside." "This junior student is not polite." Poison Island. Ryoko chuckled inwardly. In school, all the younger students who approach Ryoko Tokushima are very cautious. They are the first to find someone as impolite as Yen Kai at Shuyuan. www.zhaoshuyuan.com. However, the women of the martial arts family are not bound by details, which is more in line with the temperament of Ryoko Tokushima. Also, this is a thank you gift for my senior sister. In addition to a draft, Yen Kai also took out dozens of pages of paper and handed them to Tokushima. Ryoko, A5 in size, with many words densely written on it, as well as some small figures displaying various movements. "This is..." Ryoko Tokushima took the dozens of pages and asked. Yen Kai explained, "My senior sister was right in asking before. I do know some martial arts, and my great-grandfather once left a martial arts notebook with many martial arts insights from battles with Japanese samurai. Thinking that those martial arts insights would be of great help to my senior sister's swordsmanship cultivation, I copied some of them as a token of gratitude to my senior sister. Junior, I haven't helped you with anything yet. It might be too early to give you a thank you gift now, and it's also too valuable." Now, it's a bit embarrassing for Ryoko Tokushima. She just casually agreed, but didn't want Yen Kai to be so serious. She even prepared and delivered the thank you gift to herself in advance, which seemed like she had agreed rashly just now. Moreover, the martial arts experience is very private, and I won't give it to anyone else in my spare time. My junior is like this, isn't it? It's not that important either. My dad said it's just the martial arts of some defeated subordinates, and my great-grandfather just jotted them down in his spare time. My dad doesn't even bother to read them, Yen Kai said with a relaxed expression. Ryoko Tokushima almost choked. "You don't even care about emotions." Ryoko Tokushima is both angry and funny. Although I feel that Yen Kai's words are meant to make Ryoko Tokushima not take this gift too seriously, they are also too unpleasant to listen to. This junior, I'm afraid he's not a steel straight man. Chapter 4. The Fear of Ryoko Tokushima. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After finishing her club activities and returning home, Ryoko Tokushima cooked a simple dinner. After silently finishing it all by herself, she started practicing again in her own dojo. Becoming a swordsman is not her ultimate goal, her goal is to become a great swordsman like her father. Now is far from the time for her to slack off. Tokushima Ryoko's father was the head of Tokushima Ryu, one of the most outstanding swordsmen under the Sword Saint. In order to promote Tokushima Ryu, he had already set up a dojo abroad when he was in Tokushima Ryoko's junior high school. He rarely met Tokushima Ryoko a few times a year, and the vast Tokushima Ryu main dojo often only had Tokushima Ryoko alone. The owner of the Poison Island Flow General Dao Hall can only be a member of the Poison Island family, which is a rule. However, the Poison Island family still in Japan only have Poison Island Ryoko left. Previously, because Poison Island Ryoko had not yet obtained the qualification to be exempted from being allowed to pass the imperial examination, he could not be appointed as an apprentice, so the disciples of the Poison Island Flow General Dao Hall were all sent to other branches. Now that Poison Island Ryoko has the qualification to be exempted from being allowed to pass the imperial examination, he is also accustomed to this loneliness, so he did not recruit disciples. The Poison Island Flow General Dao Hall has been idle until now. After practicing, Ryoko Tokushima took a comfortable bath before returning to her room and gently picked up the painting given to her by Yen Kai, slowly flipping through it. Toroko's father was very strict with Toroko, so he had little exposure to anything beyond swordsmanship since childhood. He had not read many manga books, and although she didn't care much about Yen Kai's drawings on the surface, she found them quite fresh in private. At first, I heard Yen Kai say that he was drawing martial arts comics. Without exposure to Japanese martial arts culture, Ryoko Tokushima didn't quite understand the word martial arts and thought it was just a kendo manga. Therefore, Yen Kai's comics were just a pastime to follow the trend and gain popularity. After all, martial arts are popular worldwide, and in Japan, modern kendo, judo, and karate are also known as national sports, with many manga works based on them. Among them, the outstanding players, kendo heroes, judo masters, and karate generals, have also driven the popularity of kendo, judo, and karate in the opposite direction, making the already hot atmosphere of martial arts in Japan even more intense. Not only that, they have also broken through the country and sparked a wave of enthusiasm in Japanese martial arts around the world. But after flipping through a few pages, Ryoko Tokushima got with the scene of Lu Sheng, the top expert of Fusang, defeating the Central Plains martial arts masters with a sword of one enemy in 100, and killing them with corpses all over the place, directly pierced the O-point of Poison Island Ryoko, making him unable to rise again. Outward looking like a Yamato Fuko, and able to maintain a confident and heroic image in the face of members of the kendo department, Ryoko Tokushima also has a dark side behind his back that cannot be seen by anyone. I don't know when it started, but Ryoko Tokushima, who had been practicing swordsmanship all year round, had an impulse to chop the real sword towards the living. He chopped it in pieces, with blood and flesh flying everywhere at first. This impulse was just a small sign. When Ryoko Tokushima spoke to his father in a joking tone, his father only said with a stern face that this was probably an idea that most people practicing kendo had before, which was very normal. At first, Ryoko Tokushima thought the same way, but over time, this killing impulse not only did not diminish, but also became stronger. To the extent that Ryoko Tokushima could only carry a wooden knife with her. A wooden knife is not easy to kill, and with it by her side, she could remind herself not to touch the real sword as much as possible, which is equivalent to chewing gum with a smoking gun. Of course, for Tokushima Ryoko, who has now reached the realm of a swordsman, even with a wooden knife, he can easily kill people. The comforting effect of this wooden knife is far greater than its actual effect. Poison Island Ryoko Junior High School once encountered a foolish man's tailgating. Originally, if possible, if Poison Island Ryoko really wanted to lead the foolish man to a remote place and directly kill him, at least he would have to be physically disabled, and then he would argue for legitimate defense. Unfortunately, for someone like Ryoko Tokushima who is skilled in martial arts, the requirement for legitimate defense is high. If the target is not holding a firearm, the police will assume that the other party does not have the ability to harm Ryoko Tokushima, and legitimate defense naturally cannot be discussed. So Ryoko Tokushima could only subdue the foolish man and report to the police to deal with him. Until today, Ryoko Tokushima still often regrets it. He was still too careful at the time. Even if he didn't seriously injure that idiot and break his leg, the police would forgive her for being so beautiful, wouldn't they? Without further ado, Ryoko Tokushima looked down with an eager expression. She saw Ryoko defeat the elite of the three factions besieging him with one sword, and saw Ryoko cut off the arm of Tsangbi with one sword. Every strike of Ryoko's sword was a pleasure for her. The only regret was that after defeating Tsangbi, Ryoko Tokushima did not kill him, which made Ryoko Tokushima sigh slightly. However, as a swordsman, Ryoko Tokushima can also understand the respect that Yoshinobu shows towards his opponents, so he doesn't think there is anything wrong with Yoshinobu. And it was precisely because Lu Sheng spared Tsangbi's life with a sword that Ryoko Tokushima regained his sanity. He no longer read this manga with the emotion of enjoying the slaughter in it, but took it seriously and savored the plot in detail. It's also strange to say that Ryoko Tokushima has tried to express the killing impulse from those are 18, referring to violent and bloody works, but the results were not ideal, and it can even be said that he did not. It's not as satisfying to see people chopping people as one's own, and those are 18 works. Ryoko Tokushima knows they are all fake, so the pleasure naturally needs to be further discounted, almost to the point where it not only cannot bring Ryoko Tokushima pleasure, but also makes her itch and feel even more uncomfortable. But Yen Kai's manga is different, giving Ryoko Poison Island a sense of being there firsthand, and the fights in it are even more real, just like the people who draw these fight scenes have experienced them firsthand. Ryoko Tokushima quickly threw this terrifying thought out of his mind. That's a junior, not a killer. After calming down, Ryoko Tokushima straightened up and continued to watch the manga. At first glance, she fell into it, not because there were stories of killings that would excite her, but because she saw a swordsman who was extremely devout in swordsmanship and abandoned his wife and father for the sake of practicing martial arts. He was a good husband and father who was willing to let go of everything for his family. Ryoko Tokushima couldn't help but think of her father, who had left his family behind to fight abroad. However, her father was the head of the Tokushima family, and doing so would only be praised. As a daughter, even if it was against her wishes, she could only support her. But the farmer-born Lu Shengyijian is different. His behavior of fighting for his ideals will only be seen as not following his duty in being criticized by his wife, which is selfish. If Lu Shengyijian was born into the samurai class, then everything would be different. However, in the end, Lu Shengyijian's wife voluntarily died under the sword of Lu Shengyijian in order to complete the competition. Because Lu Shengyijian practiced the ruthless sword, the more ruthless the sword, the greater the power of the sword technique. Only by completely severing love and righteousness can the sword technique reach its extreme. Liusheng's wife was willing to sacrifice herself to win the competition with Lu Shengyijian. Tears streamed down Ryoko's face as she remembered her mother. She had never seen her mother before, and after she was born, her father divorced her because her father said that emotions would only affect his mastery of swordsmanship. With the heir of Naoko, he no longer needed a wife. Therefore, he resolutely divorced Naoko's mother and instructed her never to approach him and not to interfere with his sword practice. In fact, Ryoko Tokushima could sense from a very young age that her father only looked at her as an inheritor of swordsmanship, not his daughter. He had always asked Ryoko Tokushima not to care about things outside of swordsmanship and to let her go to school, just because the Tokushima family is a swordsmanship family and the inheritor's education should not be too low, otherwise he would be laughed at by others. The merciless sword, devoid of emotions and righteousness. Isn't this my sword technique from Poison Island Flow? Ryoko Tokushima laughed. Was it a bitter smile or a mockery? Japanese women seem to always be sacrificing themselves for men, seeking advice from Shuyuan www.xiaoshuyuan.com. Wives sacrifice themselves for their husbands, daughters sacrifice themselves for their fathers. These are all natural in Japan. On the other hand, the other couple, Yen Beifei and his wife Chu Shinru, were originally experts in the demon cult and the daughter of a righteous sect leader. However, both of them were willing to let go of their grudges for love. When they came together, they achieved mutual fulfillment and sacrifice. Such a beautiful love made the Poison Island Ryoko instantly moved. Perhaps Yen Beifei and Lu Sheng are natural opponents, but Yen Beifei's practice is actually the opposite of the heartless sword. The more important his lover is in his heart, the stronger he becomes. Originally, for the sake of his wife and son, Yen Beifei was unwilling to duel with Lu Sheng with one sword. However, with proper calculation, Yen Beifei ultimately decided to fight against Lu Sheng with one sword for his wife and son. At the end of the manga, there is a duel between Lu Shengyi, who killed his wife, and Yen Beifei, who was accompanied by his wife, at the top of the snow ridge. The two masters are tense and seem to be about to fight each other in the next moment. Ryoko Tokushima let out a long breath. My junior apprentice asked me for guidance on martial arts movements. But can I really handle it? Tokushima Ryoko was full of lack of confidence in her heart. She had already seen that the level of this comic was very high, with dazzling martial arts movements and very sharp, without any exaggerated or useless movements. Even she may not be able to do better than her younger brother's current drawing. But the decisive battle between Lu Sheng's sword and Yen Beifei was the highlight, and my junior brother put in a lot of effort to find her. Isn't it just to draw a better battle scene? Tokushima Ryoko was a bit afraid afraid of disappointing Yan Kai and not meeting his requirements, but there was a stronger layer of fear in her heart. She realized that she wanted to break someone else's bones, and the urge to see someone bleeding and howling became even stronger. Chapter 5. Yan Kai's Day. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After finishing his job, when it was getting dark, Yan Kai finally returned to his residence in Japan, a high-end apartment in Chiyoda district. First, he took off his school uniform and put it in the washing machine. After Yan Kai stripped naked, he directly lay down in the bathtub filled with hot water, immersing himself in the sparkling green water. This water is actually not ordinary bathing water, but a medicinal bath mixed with hundreds of precious medicinal herbs. Since Yan Kai was born, except for extremely special circumstances, he has been soaking in this medicinal bath for an hour every day. This medicinal bath can strengthen the muscles of martial artists. After Yan Kai immerses his whole body in the medicinal bath, combined with his innate fetal rest method, he can absorb the medicinal power through skin respiration in the medicinal bath, and even strengthen his 5 organs and 6 viscera. The medicinal herbs used in this medicinal bath cost tens of thousands of Chinese coins each time, and only Yan Kai's father could mix them. After Yan Kai ran away from home, the medicinal bath should have been broken, but it is unknown whether there were cute little elves causing trouble. In the cabinet where Yan Kai used to store bathing supplies, several packages of such herbs would always come out from time to time. Yan Kai naturally enjoyed using them. Every day before school, he filled the bathtub with water, then put the herbs in, slowly heated them, and when they were finished and returned, it was the time for the best medicinal power. Okay, Yan Kai is not someone who doesn't know how bad he is. He knows that his father has prepared everything for him, but he just doesn't want to expose it. His father's face still needs to be well protected, right? After taking a bath, it was already 7 o'clock. After changing into comfortable clothes, Yan Kai began to prepare dinner. He was a martial arts practitioner and was said to be poor in literature and rich in martial arts. It was said that without a solid family background, it was impossible to raise a martial arts practitioner because the consumption of food was too high, not only rice, but also meat, and a combination of vegetables and fruits was also necessary. Yan Kai prepared a dinner for more than 10 people to eat and support, but soon finished it alone, and by this time, the wall clock had already pointed to 8 o'clock. It's also fortunate that the ingredients used in Yan Kai's cooking were taken from a Chinese restaurant where he worked and had already undergone pre-treatment, so the cooking time was greatly reduced. Otherwise, cooking so many dishes would take a lot of time. At 8:01, Yan Kai pulled out a long sword from the gap behind the wall-mounted TV, walked to the balcony, flipped over from the balcony, and after a few ups and downs, jumped onto the rooftop, then began practicing swordsmanship. This practice lasted for 2 hours, occasionally folding the sword and practicing a set of palm or fist techniques. After practicing swordsmanship and boxing, Yan Kai put down his long sword and began to perform strange movements. It's strange to say that even after practicing non-stop for over 2 hours, Yan Kai didn't sweat a single drop. However, after performing those strange movements, fine sweat began to seep out of his forehead, cheeks, and even his whole body, and soon his whole body was soaked. It can be seen that these movements cost Yan Kai a lot more than just practicing swordsmanship and boxing. It wasn't until mid-moon that Yan Kai stopped his movements, picked up his long sword, jumped off the rooftop, and as he was about to land on his own balcony, he reached out and rubbed against the wall to gain strength, then flipped into his own balcony. At the end of the day, I can finally rest. Yan Kai quickly took a shower, changed into a dry set of clothes, took a sip of medicinal wine, and then went to bed. Instead of lying down, he sat cross-legged next to the folded blanket, closed his eyes, and began practicing meditation while digesting the medicinal wine's power. Since the age of 9, Yan Kai has never really slept and has been using meditation and practicing instead of sleep. It has been almost 6 years now, and Yan Kai has also become accustomed to it. Although the comfort of practicing meditation may not be as good as sleeping in bed, it is indeed a more efficient way to rest and restore physical fitness than sleeping. Yan Kai has this skill at this age, and a small portion of the credit should be attributed to it. 2 hours passed, and Yan Kai practiced his luck and collected his energy. He slowly opened his eyes and felt that he was in perfect spirits and physical condition, reaching his best state of the day. He then stretched lazily, jumped off the bed, walked to the study, picked up his paintbrush, and began to paint. In such a good state, why not use it to draw comics? Yan Kai thinks so. The pages of the manuscript were completed, and there was a faint trend of improvement in speed. After about 5 hours of drawing, Yan Kai finally stopped writing and got up to prepare breakfast and lunch. There's no way, my body is exhausted, and of course, I have to prepare a lot of breakfast and lunch. However, Yan Kai can't stand eating outside, so he can only feel a bit tired and prepare 3 meals himself. Yan Kai's father once said to him that nothing can be done to hurt his own tongue. Yan Kai felt that his father's words were very correct. When Yan Kai ordered plain water at the coffee shop, both Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu and the coffee shop waiter thought Yan Kai was stingy, but the fact was that Yan Kai was quite indifferent to money. The reason he only wanted a cup of plain water was that he couldn't swallow anything else in that coffee shop, that's all. After breakfast, carrying 2 half-meter-high food boxes with 10 layers each, Yan Kai calmly rushed towards the private seminal school. The private Shenjian school is also located in Chiyoda district, very close to Yan Kai's residence. It is only a 10-minute bus ride, and Yan Kai can take a shortcut to get closer in less than 5 minutes. After all, Yan Kai really wants to let go of running. It's much faster than buses that run at full speed in a straight line. He doesn't have to walk and stop like a bus, constantly taking detours. If it weren't for the inconvenience of running too fast in some places, Yan Kai's time to get to school would only be shorter. After spending 4 classes in the morning outside the Xinyu object, Yan Kai walked slowly to the shady side of the teaching building during lunch break, borrowed strength from the drainage pipe, and quickly climbed to the rooftop. Many people are influenced by the Japanese ACG culture and have some fantasies about the rooftops of Japanese schools. However, in fact, the rooftops of Japanese schools are basically not allowed to go up, so the scenes in the anime are also fake. Isn't this taken for granted? The rooftop is a place with a high possibility of accidents, and schools in any country won't allow students to go up there casually. The keys to the rooftop are mostly in the hands of teachers, and occasionally someone will keep a pair in the student union. However, it is difficult for ordinary students to obtain them, and it is impossible for students to enter and exit freely. Otherwise, if something unexpected happens, the PDA, Parent-Teacher Association, monster parents will devour the school teachers. But this has nothing to do with Yan Kai. Yan Kai has good likeness skills and can easily climb the rooftop without a key. The food box that was prepared in the morning was not taken to the classroom by Yan Kai. After all, his seat didn't have that much space to accommodate these, so he placed it in the corner of the rooftop and took it out to enjoy. Although it is already the top-of-the-line food box with excellent insulation ability, by noon, the bento inevitably gets a bit cold. However, it's okay. Yan Kai uses his internal strength to heat up the food box, and the slightly cool bento quickly emits a fragrant aroma. Although it's a bit troublesome, Yan Kai never mind putting effort into eating, let alone being quite willing, second only to drawing comics. After finishing the bento, there was still some time before lunch break. Yan Kai decided to jump onto the rooftop of the rooftop and sit on the eaves, enjoying the rare comfort while enjoying the breeze. This is probably one of the few free times in Yan Kai's day. After all, he is not a machine and can rotate the wheels 24 hours a day. He needs these 20 minutes to take a nap. Until the annoying preparation bell rang, Yan Kai took a deep breath, packed his food box and put it back in the corner of the rooftop. When he left school, he collected it and looked around. After confirming that no one could see him, he jumped down against the wall and used his strength several times to disperse the falling force. In the end, he gently landed on the soft ground without leaving a footprint. Then there were 2 more classes outside of the Xinyu school. The designated class time at the private Shenjian school finally came to an end. The club department began preparing for club activities, while those who returned home also packed up and prepared to leave the school. Of course, only a very small part of the homecoming department actually go home to play. The vast majority of homecoming departments should be called private school departments. They will go to various strict private schools for tutoring, and the tutoring will stay up late. The time they get home is usually later than those that seem very hard-working club departments. Private Shenjian schools are prestigious schools with high admission rates and high deviation values. Although they cannot arbitrarily extend their class hours due to regulations from the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, they suggest which private school students should go to for tutoring. They also encourage students to voluntarily, consciously, and independently learn, which is a tacit rule of Japanese schools. As for happy education, everyone just needs to smile, so there won't be much evaluation here. Anyway, people from the Central Plains can't control it. Only friendly small groups were left chatting in the classroom. After packing up his things, Yan Kai left without even looking at them. But when others saw Yan Kai leave, they were equally indifferent. Central Plains international students are inherently different in the class. Yan Kai doesn't want to actively integrate into the class, but instead always keeps a distance from other students in the class. That's why other classmates in the class will fall in love with him. If viewed from an average person's perspective, Yan Kai has been isolated by his classmates. In Japan, where collective consciousness is very strong and everyone reads air, Yan Kai can be considered to have encountered cold violence. But Yan Kai doesn't think so. He only had 3 years of high school in Japan, and didn't have any spare time to waste on this group of classmates he wouldn't deal with after graduating from high school. Although Yan Kai's mother taught him to cultivate connections, he will eventually return to the Central Plains after that. The connections in Japan are useless. Even if he went to seek help from Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu and Poison Island Ryoko, he still prepared a reward. The meaning of preparing a reward is generally to clear the money and goods, which is unrelated. Yes, in Yan Kai's opinion, the 2 beautiful women in the 2nd grade department of a private divine school are just useful tools. Speaking of tool people, Yan Kai felt it was time to ask them about their work progress. So before starting work today, should we go check on them first? Yan Kai finally remembered that he didn't seem to have their contact information. Chapter 6. The Living Sword. Murder Sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yan Kai thought he needed some effort to find Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu and Poison Island Ryoko, but on his way to the 2nd-year department, he unexpectedly met 2 beautiful women from the 2nd-year department of this private divine school at the same time. So, you forgot about asking me for help. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu bit the ice into pieces with one bite, gritting his teeth in an authentic way. The 3 of them arrived at a milk tea shop. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu had become smarter this time and didn't dare to order anything more. He only ordered a glass of lemon juice, took the ice in his mouth, and chewed it hard while talking to Yan Kai to vent his anger. Of course not. Yan Kai pushed his glasses to conceal his embarrassment, and then took advantage of this gap to start thinking about how to get things over. There's no way, Yan Kai has such a tight schedule every day. How could he possibly keep everything in mind? Although he asked Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu for help and even offered a large sum of money for it, he might not be able to remember it until Yan Kai felt that the character's dialogue was almost interesting after reviewing the comic. However, Yan Kai has always kept in mind about the incident of Ryoko Tokushima. After all, Yan Kai's manga has been stuck in the duel between Lu Xingyi's sword and Yan Beifei for many days. Although he has continued to draw the subsequent plot, the lack of such a piece has always made Yan Kai's heart unhappy, so what he is most concerned about now is this matter. In fact, if it weren't for spending a lot of time extracting martial arts notes, Yen Kai should have gone to find Ryoko Poison Island first. I just feel that Xia Zhiqiu is a serious and responsible person. Since she has asked for your help, she should trust you completely. So, before you finish your work, I want to try my best not to disturb you. Yen Kai thinks he can give himself a perfect score for this answer. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu looked at Yen Kai with suspicion and said, "Really? Nature is real. Even if it was originally fake, from this moment on, it is true." Yen Kai's glasses reflected a piercing light, which made Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu's eyes sour as he tried to force Yen Kai to speak the truth with his eyes. This bastard must be lying. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, who was stimulated by the sudden light and was about to shed tears, said with hatred. At this moment, Ryoko Tokushima pushed the artwork along with the pages of martial arts notes to Yen Kai, saying, "Yen Kai, please forgive me for talking big before. After reading your comic, I feel that I don't have the qualifications to guide your martial arts movements. Fortunately, I read your comic first and haven't had time to read those martial arts notes, otherwise I would really be ashamed of myself." Ryoko Tokushima still wore a gentle smile on his face, but his refusal was unquestionable. Before reading Yen Kai's manga, Ryoko Nojima couldn't imagine it to be such a powerful manga. No need to ask, Ryoko Tokushima knows that Yen Kai wants her to be the target of martial arts action guidance. After all, he is the only important Japanese warrior in the manga, and the character of Ryoko Ijian has indeed deeply attracted her. However, it is because of this that she cannot become the martial arts action guidance for Ryoko Ijian. The heartless and unjust swordsmanship of Lu Xing's sword scared her. Yen Kai frowned and said, "Is it impossible or unwilling?" He believed that he had a very accurate eye for people, and that Ryoko Tokushima was very suitable for the swordsmanship of Yanagi. The sword of death and the sword of heartless. When Ryoko Tokushima used his swordsmanship, although he tried his best to hide it, Yen Kai could still see the hint of killing intent contained in it. Ryoko Tokushima was born to cultivate the killing sword, otherwise he wouldn't have come to Ryoko Tokushima. I think I'm not capable enough to handle it." Ryoko Tokushima took a deep breath. "It's not that I can't, it's not that I don't want to, it's that I dare not." Last night, she spent the whole night pondering what to do if she were to imitate the swordsmanship of Lu Xing's sword. She also practiced for another hour at the dojo. Originally, Ryoko Tokushima just wanted to try imitating Ryoshige's swordsmanship, but unconsciously, she slowly brought Ryoshige's mood into it. Later, Ryoko Tokushima subconsciously mixed in with Ryoshige's swordsmanship, and in the end, she used the killing intent of Ryoshige's swordsmanship, which became smoother and sharper as she practiced it. At that time, Ryoko Tokushima seemed to be possessed by a demon, and her killing intent couldn't stop surging. If it weren't for her becoming a swordsman, her mind would have become much more determined than before, and she might have completely lost her sanity and become a killer who would kill anyone she saw. This is not to say that Liu Xing's sword technique is not suitable for Ryoko Tokushima, but it is really too suitable. Killing sword, this is definitely a killing sword. When Ryoko Tokushima came to her senses, she was standing on her sword with no strength, panting incessantly. Her trembling hand had thrown away the wooden knife, and the beloved knife that had been with her for many years seemed to have turned into some kind of fierce beast, making her afraid to touch it. Since ancient times, there has been a debate between the killing sword and the living sword in Japanese swordsmanship. Generally speaking, the killing sword is the strongest in practical combat, while the living sword has a higher artistic conception. For example, those sword masters in Japanese history have all followed the path of the living sword. Either they first learned the killing sword, then fully understood it, and then converted to the living sword. So, for a long time, the basic argument in the Japanese martial arts world has been that the living sword is superior to the killing sword, and the upper class has also learned the living sword. The royal family teaches members of the royal family the living sword. Especially in modern society, the concept of priceless life has deeply rooted in people's hearts, and the killing sword that disregards human life is even more despised. The Poison Island family is a renowned swordsmanship family. If it is rumored that Ryoko Poison Island used a killing sword, it will be a huge blow to the reputation of the Poison Island family. So Naoshima Ryoko resolutely refused Yen Kai, even though she actually had great respect for Yenching's sword and was very willing to use his swordsmanship. The exhilarating pleasure of practicing swordsmanship last night still lingers on her, making her afraid to bring a wooden knife to school today. The training in the kendo department has also taken a leave, afraid that holding a bamboo sword or similar thing will make her unable to suppress her killing impulse. Yen Kai remained silent, with a puzzled expression on his face, making it difficult to understand how Tokushima Ryoko refused. Facing Yen Kai's puzzled expression, Ryoko Tokushima held her clothes in both hands and remained silent. "What are you afraid of?" Yen Kai finally spoke up. "What are you talking about, Junior? It's strange. I can't understand what you're saying." Ryoko Tokushima trembled in his heart and forced a smile. Yen Kai continued to get straight to the point. "I don't really like to beat around the bush, so I have something to say. Is Poison Island Senior interested in sparring with me?" Facing a swordsman, physical action is always simpler and more effective than verbal action. "I'm sorry, Junior. I'm feeling a bit unwell today and I can't fight you," said Ryoko Tokushima, who had a good temper and was able to confront Yen Kai's aggressive demeanor. Without saying a word, Yen Kai slapped Ryoko Tokushima in front of him. Ryoko Tokushima instinctively launched a counterattack, but Yen Kai's palm was so powerful that Ryoko Tokushima's body shook a few times, so he didn't get hit by Yen Kai's palm. With strong blood and a strong killing intent, can you also consider Poison Island Senior Sister feeling unwell? Yen Kai closed his palm and said, "If that's the case, I really hope Poison Island Senior Sister is in good condition and what she should look like." "Hey, you're from the Central Plains. They say you're feeling unwell, why are you still fighting people? You know they're bleeding below, you want to take advantage of them." Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, who was originally sitting on the side drinking lemon juice, couldn't bear to watch anymore and shouted sternly to Yen Kai. She also didn't understand the terminology of martial artists. When she heard Yen Kai say, "blood is strong," she instinctively thought that what Yen Kai said was about girls coming every month. Moreover, Ryoko Tokushima had previously mentioned that she was feeling unwell, and when women said she was feeling unwell, most of them also referred to that, so she was very disgusted with Yen Kai's behavior. "No, Xia Zhiqiu, if there's nothing else, Yen Kai has no intention of harming me." After stabilizing his figure, Ryoko Tokushima quickly apologized for Yen Kai. Last night, while practicing swordsmanship, Ryoko Tokushima's blood was running uncontrollably and had already accumulated in his body. He should have done more exercise and dissipated this blood, but now Ryoko Tokushima is already working hard just to restrain his killing intent. How dare he move too much? This is also the reason why she dared not participate in kendo training and refused Yen Kai's sparring. Just now, Yen Kai's palm directly dispelled the pent-up blood of Ryoko Tokushima, making Ryoko Tokushima feel refreshed and in great condition. "Is Poison Island Senior interested in sparring with me now?" Yen Kai once again extended an invitation to Poison Island Ryoko and said, "My blood has turned. If I don't take it for my own use, it will be a waste." After hesitating for a while, Ryoko Tokushima finally agreed, "Okay, Junior, but can we find a secluded place? The killing intent is like a flood, only blocking but not releasing. Sooner or later, it will break through her rational dam." Yen Kai's martial arts seem to be even better than her. Yen Kai voluntarily becomes the object of her release. What else can Poison Island Ryoko refuse? Of course not a problem, Yen Kai looked at the time. "But we only have half an hour, so please act quickly. I still have a part-time job." The two quickly arrived at a remote and uninhabited clearing at the school. Yen Kai broke a branch and threw it as a weapon to Ryoko Tokushima, while he chose to deal with it empty-handed. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, who was curious about their sparring, also followed and eagerly watched as the two of them put on airs. These past few days, my mind has been filled with Yan Kai's martial arts comics. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, who was originally lacking in interest in martial arts, is now quite interested in martial arts. I have also searched for some videos of so-called experts sparring online, but I either feel bored or don't understand them, which is far less interesting than Yan Kai's comics. Now that Yan Kai, the manga author, can be seen competing with others in martial arts, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu is curious about how much difference this will have from his manga. Holding a moderately long branch in her hand, Ryoko Tokushima's eyes became increasingly bright, and the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl in a seductive curve. It's been almost a day since she last held anything in the shape of a long strip. This is probably the longest time that Ryoko Tokushima has ever remembered. After all, her father has always demanded that she keep her sword close to her body. Even when she still sleeps with a wooden knife in her arms. But last night, out of fear, afraid of being devoured by the killing intent, she threw away the wooden knife and never picked it up again. Now that the familiar feeling had returned, Ryoko Tokushima's mood was unprecedentedly joyful, and her killing intent immediately rose to its peak. Die for me. Without a judge, of course, no one would shout to start, and no matter whether it was a surprise attack or not, Ryoko Tokushima swung his sword as if he wanted to directly chop Yan Kai under a tree branch. This is not an impossible thing. Even with only a branch in his hand, a swordsman can easily cut open a person's body. If the sword of Ryoko Tokushima were to be used in practice, Yan Kai might have been cut in two by a branch. But would it be so simple? Yan Kai put on a posture similar to Tai Chi, and with a flick of his left hand, he let go of the slashing strike from Tokushima Ryoko and said calmly, "The momentum is good, continue. This move is just an appetizer. If Yan Kai fails directly, then Poison Island Ryoko will be depressed." Poison Island Ryoko continued his fast attack, but was easily resolved by Yan Kai. The disorderly attack like a storm lasted for nearly 3 minutes. The sense of killing stopped rampaging, and reason began to take the upper hand again. Ryoko Tojima's superb swordsmanship began to play a role. Yan Kai, who had been calm, became weak. Not bad, it's starting to get a bit interesting, but it's not enough. Yan Kai let out a voice of admiration, and his soft fists became more vigorous. However, Ryoko Tokushima, who had already gained the upper hand, gradually retreated. My martial arts technique is called Yin-Yang-Ju, which is a combination of yin and yang. It's a combination of strength and softness. Don't be hesitant, do your best. Yan Kai said to the forced Poison Island Ryoko. Is yin and yang decisive? It's really impressive, so I'm really not polite. Tokushima Ryoko grabbed a branch with both hands and attacked again. Unlike the fierce slashing and chopping dominated by killing intent at the beginning, the exquisite swordsmanship has been further improved. Ryoko Tokushima began to use rationality to control killing intent and unleash the more powerful and domineering Tokushima Ryuki swordsmanship than before. In the past, the awkward parts of swordsmanship began to work smoothly, and the killing intent that needed to be distracted and suppressed during the process of fighting with others became the biggest driving force. Ryoko Tokushima felt that his current state was unprecedentedly good. After a moment of confrontation, Yan Kai and Ryoko Tokushima had interactions and were evenly matched, making it difficult to distinguish between high and low. After nearly 100 rounds of fighting between the two, Yan Kai suddenly burst out at a speed that was more than twice as fast as before, easily grasping the wrist of Ryoko Tokushima. With a shake, he shook Ryoko Tokushima's branches and let go. Enjoying the pleasure of the battle, Ryoko Tokushima, who couldn't help but feel overwhelmed, felt as if he had been doused with a basin of cold water on his head, sweating profusely and inhaling his cool breath. Sorry, it's almost time. I'm running late for work. That's all for today. I'll reschedule for another day when I have time. Yen Kai held his phone in the other hand and calmly looked at the time, apologizing to Ryoko Tokushima, who had been knocked down from the peak of pleasure. Although he was the one who started it, it was also him who had to withdraw midway. Yen Kai was not an unreasonable person, so he went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to apologize to Ryoko Nakajima. My senior sister's performance just now was very good, it felt like a sword from Lusheng. Please make sure to work harder and don't say anything that you can't handle. Yen Kai encouraged Ryoko Tokushima, while forcefully handing over his artwork and martial arts notes to the restless Ryoko Tokushima. So, I'll take a step first. Goodbye. Yen Kai picked up the backpack strap that had been placed on the ground before, dusted it, and was about to leave. Wait. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu, who was so engrossed in watching the play that he almost forgot about the main matter, finally reacted and handed over his revised dialogue sketch to Yen Kai, saying, I have revised your sketch. Oh, thank you, Senior Xia Zhiqiu. Yen Kai, who had been moving his muscles and bones for a long time, almost forgot about entrusting Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu. He covered his embarrassment with a smile and carefully placed the painting into his backpack. Also, add your line to me. Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu is unwilling to be authentic. Damn it, usually those boys try their best to ask for the line number from themselves. How come when they come to this Central Plains person, they want her Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu to condescend and take the initiative to add this Central Plains person's number? It's a great shame. Oh, okay. Although Yen Kai has not been in Japan for long, he also knows that Line is equivalent to WeChat in the Central Plains and is the most popular social networking app nowadays. He has also registered one, although his friends on it are only cousins from Japanese relatives. Wait, please make sure to add me too. Ryoko Nakajima, who had regained his senses, also joined the conversation. Does this make me feel a bit less reserved as the first initiator? Feeling trapped, Xia Zhiqiu Shiyu began to feel suffocated. Chapter 7. The Past of Poison Island Flow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Returning to the dojo, Tokushima Ryoko's mood became increasingly chaotic. After hesitating for a while, she still dialed her father's overseas number and reported her situation to him. It may be difficult to say, love, but Ryoko Tokushima's father is definitely the most respected and important person, neither of which is true. She had such a big thing happen to herself, and the education she received from a young age made it impossible for her to deceive her father. The previous hesitation was only about how to explain it, but the determination that was explained was made early on. After telling her father everything, Ryoko Tokushima felt like a criminal waiting for trial, with a heavy heart and immense pressure. Oh, this way. The expected reprimand did not come, and Ryoko's father only replied lightly. Father, it seems that I have embarked on the path of killing swords. Ryoko Tokushima was afraid that his father might not have fully understood what he had just said, so he emphasized it again. I already knew that you would eventually embark on the path of the sword of murder. The only thing I didn't expect was that it would be so fast. Tokushima Ryoko's father's answer surprised him greatly. However, our Poison Island sword technique is a living sword. If I embark on the path of killing swords, it will tarnish the reputation of our Poison Island sword technique. Poison Island, Ryoko exclaimed excitedly. Growing up with the glory of Tokushima Ryukyu swordsmanship, Tokushima Ryukyu valued the reputation of Tokushima Ryukyu swordsmanship more than his life. The Poison Island family is a renowned swordsmanship family, shining brightly. If this honor is tarnished by her Poison Island son, she will not forgive herself for being the first. There was a moment of silence on the phone, and then he slowly said, but what if Poison Island flow swordsmanship is originally a killing sword? Poison Island Ryoko was deeply shocked. After practicing swordsmanship for over a decade, he realized that it was a murder sword. 80 years ago, Tokushima Ryoko swordsmanship was a famous killing sword in Japan, and in that era, killing swords were the mainstream, said Tokushima. Ryoko's father, isn't this the same as Lu Xing's sword? The idea suddenly came to Ryoko Tokushima's mind. Although Lu Xing killed countless people with his sword, he never had any pleasure in killing those people. The only one who could excite him was Yen Beifei. Am I losing my head? At the serious moment when my father was speaking, he suddenly remembered the manga. Ryoko Tokushima wished he could knock his head a few times. And for the words her father said, Ryoko Tokushima also knows about this period of history. The senior brothers and sisters in the Tokushima River have mentioned this matter to her, but none of them are as specific as her father's. However, Ryoko Tokushima remembers that the warriors who were ordered to go to the Central Plains seemed to have a very bad fate. Most of them stayed in the Central Plains forever, with no bones left. Occasionally, those who were alive also left with lifelong disabilities and could only become useless. Those samurai can be said to be the essence of the practitioners of Japanese assassin's sword, assassin's fist, and it is precisely because they have lost this essence that the assassin's sword, assassin's fist has been unable to hold up in the Japanese martial arts world. The well-preserved Tokushima current also rose to the forefront of the Japanese martial arts world, taking advantage of the situation where half of the country was lost. Many people have praised the wise decision of Tokushima, Ryoko's great-grandfather. Although I was not ordered to go to the Central Plains, in fact, my grandfather still went to the Central Plains as a private person. Naoko's father suddenly revealed a different history from what Naoko knew. Tokushima. Ryoko couldn't help but express surprise and quickly apologized. According to the Tokushima family's teachings, elders should not make strange noises when speaking. Tokushima Ryoko's father also understood Tokushima Ryoko's surprise and only reprimanded him lightly. Although understanding, reprimand is still necessary, which is the minimum attitude as a father. After reprimanding him, Ryoko Tokushima's father continued, at that time, my grandfather's cultivation had reached a bottleneck. Although he didn't want to be called in as an accomplice to the military massacre, he was very eager to fight against the masters of the Central Plains. After hearing that a young swordsman with extraordinary swordsmanship had emerged from the Central Plains and killed several famous Japanese samurai in a row, I couldn't help but want to challenge him in order to break through. What about the result? Poison Island, Ryoko asked nervously, but at the same time, he thought of a sword from Lu Xing. He went to the Central Plains to seek a breakthrough. She vaguely guessed the result, but didn't want to believe it. She had a premonition that this was the opportunity for Poison Island flowing swordsmanship to transition from a murder sword to a living sword. She wouldn't think that Poison Island flowing swordsmanship was transitioning from a murder sword to a living sword to cater to the changing times. The Poison Island family didn't have such a flexible person, and if that were the case, her father wouldn't have said so much to Poison Island Ryoko. I lost, and it was a disastrous defeat. Naoko's father's promise did not meet Naoko's expectations, but Naoko couldn't help but bite his gums tightly. Although the swordsman from the Central Plains defeated his grandfather, he remembered that his grandfather had never killed his fellow countrymen in the Central Plains, and he did not take his grandfather's life. Instead, he made his grandfather swear never to harm anyone in the Central Plains or step into the Central Plains again. The tone of his father's voice also revealed a strong sense of disappointment. The defeat of Poison Island's sword technique made their father and daughter empathize. Grandfather swore and returned to Japan. In order to fulfill his promise, he devoted himself to practicing for 40 years and changed the Poison Island flowing swordsmanship from the killing sword to the living sword. However, the essence of Poison Island flowing swordsmanship is the killing sword, which is made of skin and bone. Therefore, when practicing Poison Island flowing swordsmanship, there is a risk of slipping into the killing sword if one is not careful. But the killing sword is the essence of Poison Island flow swordsmanship. Ryoko, you have been killing since you were young, and I have seen this for a long time. People like you are rare talents for my Poison Island flow swordsmanship. I used to be afraid of affecting your growth, so I kept it from you. But now that you have understood the killing sword in my Poison Island flow swordsmanship on your own, it doesn't matter. Keep practicing. Tokushima. Ryoko felt relieved that she didn't really care much about the murder sword or the living sword. What she truly cared about was whether she had betrayed Tokushima Ryukyu. Since Tokushima Ryukyu's swordsmanship was originally a murder sword, she had no further aversion to the murder sword. However, father, nowadays people have a lot of prejudice against the killing sword. If I practice the killing sword, will it damage the reputation of Poison Island flow? Ryoko Tokushima no longer opposes the killing sword, but the reputation of the killing sword in Japan is really bad, especially in the current era of peace and prosperity, where it is even more difficult for the killing sword to survive. Do you think it's just my Tokushima family practicing murder swords? Tokushima. Ryoko's father's mocking voice came, which surprised him again. The concept of the living sword originated from the yen of Lu Sheng, the founder of the New Yin flow. Since Lu Sheng's New Yin flow became a royal swordsmanship instructor, other schools of thought have also incorporated the concept of the living sword into their own schools to cater to the royal family, which has led to the flourishing of the living sword. However, when it comes to actual combat, it is certain that the killing sword is more powerful than the living sword. Therefore, even now, major schools of thought that hold high the banner of the living sword are secretly teaching the killing sword. However, if they are not their legitimate disciples, they will not easily teach it. This is also the case with our Poison Island clan. Apart from your senior brothers such as Tanaka Gaolu and other disciples, I have not passed on any of the Poison Island clan's killing swords. The reason why the killer sword was rejected is because more than 30 years ago, there were multiple bloody conflicts among martial artists in Japan, which also injured many civilians, causing a wave of anti-martial arts sentiment in the country. The martial arts community had no choice but to blame all the crimes on the killer sword and began to ban the killer sword on the surface. This is why various schools of thought today refer to themselves as the living sword. This is another piece of secret news. Upon hearing it, Ryoko Tokushima felt relieved. It turned out that she was not alone in practicing the killing sword, which made Ryoko Tokushima's heart relax a bit. But Ryoko Tokushima only breathed a sigh of relief for a while, and his father's words made Ryoko Tokushima's heart tighten again. The father of Tokushima Ryoko continued, however, Ryoko, you were born with a murderous nature. I should have officially taught you the killing sword only after you became a great swordsman and understood the mysteries of the god. Your spiritual cultivation is still shallow, so if you rashly practice the killing sword, if your killing intent cannot be expressed in time, you may be controlled by it. So, Ryoko, tomorrow you should go and apply for a leave of absence. Father. Father, what should I do with my daughter's studies? Naoshima Ryoko said in a panicked tone, looking for the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com. At this moment, what flashed through her mind was still Yen Kai's manga, and perhaps even his character. If I drop out of school, I won't be able to see Yen Kai's comics again in the future. Ryoko Tokushima finds it difficult to part with Yen Kai's manga. Ryoko Tokushima's father is a bit strange about how his daughter started to focus on her studies. Even though her grades were only average, she didn't have many friends in school, and the boys who looked at the school only felt that they were very childish. Toroko's father couldn't believe there was anything worth Toroko's nostalgia for in school. But even if there is anything worth cherishing, it is not worth mentioning compared to practicing swordsmanship. Ryoko Tokushima's father made a decision directly for him, and he has always been like this. For the people of my Poison Island family, studying doesn't matter at all. After you finish dropping out tomorrow, you can go directly to your senior sister Gao Lu's Taoist school and ask her to help you stabilize your killing intent when needed. You haven't learned how to control killing intent systematically, and your thoughts are easily dominated by killing intent. I will handle my affairs here and come back, and then I will personally teach you the mystery of the Poison Island flowing killing sword. Tokushima Ryoko's father began arranging everything. But, father, what should you do with a Taoist temple abroad? Without you taking charge of the overall situation, an unstable temple cannot continue to operate. Ryoko Tokushima was even more surprised when he heard that his father was also coming back. Expanding overseas is currently the most important business strategy for the Poison Island Flow Museum, but according to my father's words, it seems that I want to abandon the overseas museum and disregard the layout of Poison Island Flow over the years. Fool! Your cultivation is the top priority of my Poison Island Flow. Tokushima Ryoko's father shouted loudly at him for the first time today. Chapter 8. Change of Mind. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The martial arts world in Japan has been constantly changing over the years. After you sing and I appear, the disputes between different schools have never stopped. Among those well-known schools, which one has never produced an invincible figure for a while. However, in the Japanese martial arts world for over 100 years, it has been the second best in terms of flowing water, the first in terms of iron, and the title of the top Japanese martial arts expert of the Three Extremes sect has not been lost for 100 years. Now, the leader of the Three Extremes sect, Beishan Xiongwu, is recognized as the top Japanese martial arts expert. There are 4 sword saints and 5 masters in Japan, but the other 8 people all have to respectfully call themselves the Great Masters of Beishan Xiongwu, indicating their status. Even more so, the name of the current sword saint, Tao Jing Kong, was given to him by Xiongwu Kitayama. Tao Jing Kong is a Japanese swordsman, but the top swordsman in Japan is Beishan Xiongwu from the Three Extremes sect. Not only in kendo, but also in judo and karate, Kitayama Takahiro ranks first in Japan in terms of cultivation. What is the 3 poles? Kendo, judo, and karate, all 3 of them reach the pinnacle and are the top. It is difficult to achieve this, it is difficult to climb to the sky, but Beishan Xiongwu has achieved it, so he is undoubtedly the god of martial arts in Japan and is worshipped by all Japanese martial artists. But if only the leader, Beishan Xiongwu, is powerful, then although the Three Extremes sect is powerful, it is not scary. What's even more terrifying is that Beishan Xiongwu's eldest son, the young leader of the Three Extremes sect, Beishan Wu'er, is also a rare hero. 10 years ago, Beishan Wu'er, who was only 40 years old, stepped into the realm of a master. The Three-Pole sect, consisting of a double master, declared to the Japanese martial arts world that the Beishan family still had at least 40 years of rule over the Japanese martial arts world. The most feared thing for all schools of thought is the lack of connections between youth and yellow. Especially, although various schools in Japan also widely accept disciples, the core part of inheritance is still passed down from father to son. The probability of poor transmission is too high. How to have an excellent heir is something that all school leaders must worry about. The Beishan family has been glorious for too many years, and I don't know how many people hope to see no successors in the Beishan family. But this wish was soon shattered. The only son of the Kitayama family, Kitayama Nobuyoshi, who is only 18 years old, resolutely stepped into the ranks of great swordsmen at the beginning of this year, becoming the youngest great swordsman in Japan today. While scaring countless Japanese warriors, he couldn't help but sigh. The 3 generations of inheritors are like this. When will the position of the Kitayama family as the number 1 in Japan be shaken? The first place in Japan is unattainable, but the second place in Japan is not impossible to achieve. At least, the name of the sword saint of Tao Jing Kong is difficult to win over. The other 3 swordsmen who have the name of sword saint but do not have the name of sword saint have always wanted to pull him off their horses. However, behind Tao Jing Kong stands the Japanese imperial family, who teaches swordsmanship. This is why the other 3 swordsmen have to sell him a bit of thin noodles and not compete with him. As part of the realm of sword saint, the 4 major swordsmen engage in a fierce battle with each other. Even if they win against Tao Jing Kong today, they may lose again tomorrow. The name of sword saint revolves around, and if it spreads, it may not be a source of ridicule from foreigners. Meanwhile, Beishan Xiongwu, who has absolute ruling power, does not compete for the name of sword saint. The three major swordsmen can only take a step back automatically, allowing Tao Jing Kong, who has the highest status, to take advantage. Well, in Japan, having a high status means taking advantage. Moreover, although they do not have the title of Sword Saint, the treatment received by the three major swordsmen is not inferior to that of Sword Saint. Thinking about it, this ending is not unacceptable. However, the three major swordsmen did not compete for the title of Sword Saint, while the other swordsmen did not. They kicked Tao Jing Kong out of the position of Sword Saint, and any Japanese swordsman with some strength had such thoughts. Especially those great swordsmen who are closest to the realm of Sword Saint, who doesn't dream of one day stepping into the realm of Sword Saint, and then beheading Tao Jing Kong's dog head, thus making swordsmanship holy. As one of the top swordsmen under the Sword Saint, Ryoko Tokushima's father also had this idea. However, Ryoko Tokushima's father knew that as he grew older, his muscles and bones aged, and his chi and blood declined, he no longer had that possibility. The realm of Sword Saint was only a narrow line away from him, but this line, this one, was an incredibly distant abyss that he could never overcome in his lifetime. Therefore, in recent years, he gradually put aside his desire to become a swordsman and instead focused his energy on developing the Poison Island sect and cultivating Ryoko Tokushima. Naoko's father, the Sword Saint, has no hope, but with Naoko's talent, she has the potential to become the first female Sword Saint in Japan. In the eyes of Ryoko Tokushima's father, the importance of cultivating Ryoko Tokushima into a Sword Saint lies above the development of the Taoist temple. Other schools of thought, for their own daughters, are mostly just seen as a medium to recruit a son.in.law. After all, there is no choice between a biological son and a dragon or insect, and it can only be determined by fate. However, son.in.law can be selected from the best, and it is common to recruit son.in.law as the heir in Japan, which can even be said to be a popular trend. The founder of a certain chaebol even publicly declared that he would rather have a daughter than a son, because with a daughter, he can choose a son. But Ryoko Tokushima's father was not like this. He had long felt that Ryoko Tokushima's talent was truly nurtured by him as his daughter's heir. The energy he spent on Ryoko Tokushima may not be as much as the other disciples who sympathized with his children combined. Father, calm down. Naoshima Ryoko didn't know how much her father valued her upbringing, and her heart was both moved and apologetic. Riko, your father values you so much, yet you are distracted by such trivial things as comics. You are truly a shameful woman. Ryoko Tokushima scolded himself fiercely in his heart. That's it. Take a good rest today and don't think about anything other than swords. Yoshiko's father didn't want to blame his daughter for everything and wanted to end today's call. After all, he had already made up his mind to come back to Japan and had a lot of things to deal with. He would be very busy in the next few days. By the way, which school of thought is that kid who can suppress you? Just as he was about to end the call, Ryoko Tokushima's father suddenly remembered the student he mentioned. When Tokushima Ryoko reported to him earlier, he only mentioned that he was a fellow student at the same school and did not mention the name of that student. Tokushima Ryoko's father suddenly remembered and felt a little curious, so he casually asked a question. It's not that Naoko's father, Lao Wan, is selling melons, it's just that Naoko is too excellent. Although Ryoko Tokushima has been suppressing her true nature and practicing the living sword that is not suitable for her in recent years, even so, Ryoko Tokushima's strength can still be considered the most outstanding among her peers in the Japanese martial arts world. Except for the young man from the Kitayama family who is truly demonic, among the descendants of other schools of thought, those who are not much older than Ryoko Tokushima can only be considered as average compared to Ryoko Tokushima. Ryoko Tokushima's peers who can be easily suppressed are even 1 year younger than Ryoko Tokushima. Such young talents are indeed worthy of Ryoko Tokushima's father's attention. Is my father asking my younger brother? My younger brother is not from Japan. He is an international student from Zhongyuan, named Yen Kai, and uses a strange martial art called Yin Yang Ju. It's a bit like Tai Chi, but it seems to be very different from it. Ryoko Tokushima answered truthfully. Yen. Tokushima Ryoko's father only said one word, and the phone suddenly got stuck on the other side, with no more sound coming. After a long silence, Ryoko Tokushima suspected that something had suddenly happened on his father's side or that the signal was not good. Finally, Ryoko Tokushima's father's voice came back. After careful consideration, it seems that you also have some attachment to your studies. Moreover, if my daughter from the Poison Island family drops out of high school, it would not be pleasant to hear about it. Moreover, you have a great chance of winning this year's National High School Kendo competition. It would be a pity if you drop out now. Tokushima Ryoko's father came up with a bunch of reasons, as if he had to change his mind for many reasons. You said that your Central Plains junior brother can suppress your killing intent, so that's it. If you can get his consent and let him help you suppress your killing intent and cultivate, you don't have to drop out of school. I will also have your senior brother Tanaka bring you the mystery scroll of Poison Island flowing swordsmanship. You can learn it yourself. If you encounter someone you don't understand, please contact me via video. With the advanced technology, it seems that there is no need to teach swordsmanship face-to-face. Yes, father. She has lived this way for so many years, and she wouldn't question this kind of life at all. That's it then. Wait until you get your younger brother's consent, then call me and let me know. Nojima Ryoko's father really wants to end the call this time. Although his voice was calm, a huge wave had already stirred up in his heart, and he needed to be quiet. Wait, father. Tokushima Ryoko suddenly spoke up. Ryoko, what else is there? Ryoko's father asked. Today, he has been a bit more patient with Ryoko, but he doesn't mind listening to what she says. So, I want to ask, how did the Central Plains swordsman who defeated his great-grandfather end up? Ryoko Tokushima asked a question that had been lingering in his heart since just now. He must be a great swordsman who can defeat many swordsmen from all over Japan. His ending must be remembered by Ryoko Tokushima. After a moment of silence, Tokushima Ryoko's father said, I was defeated in the Battle of Japan in 1940, and he died in the same year. I heard he died from serious injuries, but I have closed my eyes. If it weren't for him leading the Central Plains warriors, my Japan might not have been defeated, and even if it were, it wouldn't have been so fast. Oh, he is a hero. Even if I were from Japan, I still admire him. Father. Ryoko Tokushima wanted to ask again, but his father had already hung up the phone. There were only beeps echoing on the other end, and Ryoko Tokushima could only disappointedly put down the phone. I originally wanted to ask my father about the name of the swordsman from the Central Plains. It's rare for my father to say so much in his daily life, and it will be difficult to have such an opportunity in the future. Chapter 9. Yen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tokushima Ryoko's father hung up the phone and returned from outside to inside. He came to a chessboard and murmured to himself, Yen Kai, Yin Yang Ju, Shui Wen Hai. It's not wrong. Poison Island, what are you talking about? Playing chess. On the other side of the chessboard, an old man was playing with the pieces in his hand, urging the father of Tokushima Ryoko to say, I can't play this chess anymore. Let's call it a day. Tokushima Ryoko's father said to the old man. The old man was in a hurry. While taking advantage of Ryoko Tokushima answering his father's phone call, he finally came up with a brilliant trick and was about to use it. However, Ryoko Tokushima's father gave up the game at this moment, and he wouldn't be willing to do it. The mood for playing chess is gone. Even if you force me to play, I lose interest and you lose interest. It's better to forget about it. Tokushima Ryoko's father said coldly. What happened? The old man asked. Ryoko Tokushima's father is right. He is already past the age of competition, and his pursuit of chess is just fun. His desire for victory or defeat is not as strong. If Ryoko Tokushima's father forcefully plays a game without any intention, he will not enjoy any fun. But the old man was very interested in the changes in the father of Tokushima Ryoko. This old man is not easily disturbed by anything, he must have had something really wrong to do so. Do you remember the two of the Doshin Nanshan Yinjiro and the sword Saint Heidi Longma? Asked the old man instead of answering, do you remember them? The old man glanced at Takako Tokushima's father and said, in terms of age, I can be your grandfather. You've all heard of their names, wouldn't I know? I'm just old and haven't developed dementia yet. The old man is almost 100 years old and is a living fossil in the Japanese martial arts world. Those two names have been heard like thunder since he was a child, and the Japanese martial artists at that time never stopped talking about them. Doshin Nanshan Yinjiro and sword Saint Heidi Longma. 80 years ago, both of them ranked among the pinnacle of Japanese martial arts and were known as the Holy of Japan. Even compared to the former leader of the Three Extremes sect, the legend of Kitayama Shionwu's deceased father leading the Three Extremes sect to become the top leader in Japan. Kitayama Shin was only slightly inferior, and their combined power surpassed Kitayama Shin. Unfortunately, they died early, otherwise the Three Extremes sect might not be able to dominate the family, the old man said with regret. The Three Extremes sect is a big stone that weighs on the heads of all the Japanese warriors. Those who are weaker naturally have a look of reverence when it comes to the Three Extremes sect, but some who think to themselves are powerful, although they also have the same reverence, there are always some small tastes to eat. This old man is like this. Well, this may also be related to his grandson not inheriting his school of thought, but instead going to apprentice to the Three Extremes. Although he didn't succeed in the end, he still formed a bond with the Three Extremes, and he unilaterally formed it. Indeed, without them, the families and schools behind them quickly declined, and their unique skills were also lost. This is one of the biggest losses in the Japanese martial arts world in nearly a century. Tokushima Ryoko's father nodded and said. Why did you suddenly mention this? The old man exclaimed. Tokushima Ryoko's father is not a sentimental person. He suddenly mentioned what happened to him. Is it related to the phone call just now? The old man couldn't help but become curious. Tokushima Ryoko's father remained silent and fiddled with the pieces on the chessboard. Under his manipulation, the white pieces quickly formed a large Chinese character. Yen. The old man saw the Chinese character clearly and immediately took a cold breath, saying, You're not good at playing chess, why are you so scary? The old man was an experienced person of that era, and his perception of the word, yen, was much greater than that of the hearsay of the father of Ryoko Tokushima. It's nothing, I was scared today and just wanted to find someone to share it with, said Takako Tokushima's father with a cool smile. He is a very cold and handsome man, although he is already over 50 years old, he has a cunning demeanor. His current appearance, mature and handsome, is the most attractive to women. His cold face suddenly burst into a smile, which is even more deadly and tempting. Unfortunately, he was not facing a teenage girl or a lonely woman, but rather an elderly man on the brink of death. The old man rolled his eyes and asked, What's going on? A young man surnamed Yen has come to Japan, said Tokushima Ryoko's father. The chess piece in his hand was crushed by a handful, and the old man's face showed a look of shock. Which yen is it? The old man asked which yen it was, but all he knew was that yen could make the father of the quiet and talkative Naomasa Ryoko talk more. 80 years ago, the yen who killed the Doshin Nanshan Yinjiro and the sword Saint Heidi Longma was also the yen who came to Japan more than 30 years ago to challenge the major sword saint masters. The father of Ryoko Tokushima answered honestly. You're not mistaken. The old man received the answer, but he really hoped it was wrong. In the past century, there have been two great disasters in the Japanese martial arts world. It has been more than 30 years since the second one. The older generation is very secretive about that disaster, so the younger generation knows very little about it. However, the older generation is the one who experienced that disaster firsthand. For him, that disaster was like yesterday, and the aftermath of the disaster is still affecting the current Japanese martial arts world in all aspects. He really doesn't want a third disaster to happen again. That kid's surname is Yen and he knows the yin-yang technique, so he shouldn't be wrong. Tokushima Ryoko's father shattered the old man's imagination. The yin-yang technique, this is Xue Wenhai's unique martial arts. By the way, he is the brother-in-law of that person, and it is reasonable for him to teach his martial arts to his nephew. The old man's eyelids twitched fiercely. Don't worry, that kid didn't come to Japan to cause trouble this time, he just came to study abroad. I guess so, Tokushima's father said with uncertainty. Let him go. Who allowed him to study abroad? Who gave him a visa? The old man angrily said. The old man also knew that the yen who came to Japan now was just a teenager. Compared to the two yen people from 80 years ago and more than 30 years ago, it cannot be generalized, but this does not affect his hostility towards that young yen. The family surnamed Yen has been listed by the Ministry of National Defense this morning, so they probably won't be able to pass the visa, but he is now seriously studying in Japan. I think only the three extremes in China have the ability to do so, said Tokushima Ryoko's father calmly. It's the three extremes sect again. The old man exclaimed, can't that group of people do something good? If the three extremes sect had been willing to respond to the emperor's call back then the martial arts world in Japan is really going to die. Tokushima Ryoko's father followed closely. The old man choked on the words of Naoko's father, but had to admit that what Naoko's father said was right. With the skills of that young swordsman back then, even if he were to crush the other half of the Japanese martial arts world, the outcome would not change much. That kid came to Japan. The upper class must know about it. They don't even worry about it. What are you worried about? Tokushima Ryoko's father felt a little sorry for his chess pieces, and just now the old man was furious and crushed several more. That's high-end goods, very expensive. How could that group of beggars be successful? The old man cursed, and after enduring the entire Showa era, he couldn't stand the bureaucratic politicians in Japan now. But the old man can do nothing but curse. Yen Kai's ability to study in Japan is definitely the result of the guarantee of the three extremes. In Japan, even the Prime Minister dare not easily ask what the three extremes want to achieve. The tripolar sect is not only a martial arts school, but also a giant oligarch spanning the business and political realms. It is even the spiritual leader of the old aristocrats of the big landlords in Kansai. It is too simple for him to guarantee a person. The old man can only curse a few words to get rid of his addiction, but he also knows that he is insignificant and cannot change anything. He is indeed a famous figure in the Japanese martial arts world, but the three extremes faction is the emperor of the Japanese martial arts world. How could he have just won the three extremes faction? The current world of Japanese samurai is too dull, and it would be a good thing if a catfish from the original could stir up the fish pond. Tokushima Ryoko's father picked each piece into the chess box, but there was no concern from the old man. What a good thing. The past catastrophe is vividly remembered, and the old man cannot be as calm as the father of Tokushima Ryoko. Zhaoshuyuan.com now is a rule of law society, killing people is illegal, said Takako Tokushima's father, shaking his head. The old man choked on the words of the father of Ryoko Tokushima again. Indeed, whether it was 80 years ago or more than 30 years ago, Japan was not peaceful, but now it can be called a peaceful and prosperous era. The bloody conflicts of the past are now a major criminal case that shocked the whole country. That is to say, the old system is no longer feasible now. I wonder if even the underworld has put down their machetes and turned to selling milk tea. The old man really can't keep up with the times anymore. His mind is still filled with the thoughts of the last century, even 50 or 60 years ago, which shows that the arrival of the young man, Yen, is about to face a catastrophe. However, Ryoko's father is much more open-minded, only treating Yen Kai as a catfish, and this catfish has a good relationship with his daughter. Isn't it because of Yen Kai that Naoko's father gave up on letting Naoko drop out of school and focus on cultivation? He believes that with Ryoko Tokushima practicing beside him, there is a great chance of becoming a swordsman in the future. However, if he can have more contact with Yen Kai, he can learn a little and a half stars of his family's swordsmanship from him. Tokushima Ryoko's father was filled with passion. The older generation in the Japanese martial arts world is extremely afraid of Yen, but they are also drooling over its unpredictable martial arts skills. It is only with the increasing number of deaths that this greed is overshadowed by fear. Naoko's father never thought about letting Naoko steal Yen Kai's martial arts, which was impossible. However, even if it was just a regular martial arts exchange, it was probably enough to benefit Naoko endlessly. It was for this reason that Naoko's father gave up his original plan. Compared to being by his side and staying in Japan, it may be more beneficial for the growth of Ryoko Tokushima.